welcome to another episode of Psychonaut Sessions. This is your host, Daniel Moeller, and today we're going to talk about Warlock 5. Now, my goal is to go through quite a few issues. I have the first 10 issues. I would like to go through the first 10 issues of Warlock 5, walk through them all, and this is why. So, Warlock 5 was a comic written by Gordon Derry and art by Denis Bevois. I think is how you pronounce it, Bevois. Um, and it was published by Aircel Comics, which Aircel was started, I think, in 1985 by Barry Blair in Ontario. And it was sort of, I think it eventually merged with Eternity, which was under the Malibu imprint. And Aircel was popular in that era of the mid 80s and the black and white boom, of being one of those, black and white kind of indie companies really trying to make their mark. I think where they're most famous for is they're responsible for Men in Black, actually. The Men in Black movie, which actually started as a comic. They were very interested, a lot of comics at the time were interested in, kind of doing licensed properties. Aircel, I think, was very interested in coming up with original concepts, and this was one that I think actually did really well. A lot of the art and storytelling in many of the Aircel books are just kind of like all over the place, really. But this, I think, is probably the most professional quality, and it's because of Gordon Derry's writing with Denis Bevois' art, like, really took off. And really why I want to cover this is because I ran into this when I went to Planet Comic Con this year in Kansas City. I ran into the Outland Entertainment guys. And I live in a hole. I had no idea this was happening. I walked by and I was like, Warlock 5 at their booth. And they were like, yeah, man, Warlock 5. We redid Warlock 5. I'm like, what do you mean? Yeah, we're continuing it. Like, the Warlock 5 from Aircel in the 80s are like, hell yeah. So this is like the graphic novel that they produced. There was a Kickstarter. I completely missed all this. That's the continuation of the Warlock 5 story. And then they also have another comic out. That's even the continuation of this, moving further on. I was mind blown. Got to sit. So not only was I mind blown because it was also written by Cullen Bunn, who I'm a fan of, but I know I've met a couple times. My friends Aaron Conway and Josh Roberts have been published in a lot of Cullen Bunn's works. So I know him peripherally, but I really admire his work. So it was written by him. And so the guy who I talked to was Jeremy Moeller. Different spelling, but same last name. He's Mohler. So we're not related. But I talked to Jeremy, and he acquired the rights of Warlock 5, and I think even a couple of other Aircel properties. And is using his imprint, Outland Entertainment, to put out these works and a ton of other. In Planet Comic Con, there's a lot of stuff. It's kind of like the main Comic Con in Kansas City. The Outland Entertainment booth was the most appealing. Not just because just of like all of the amazing works there, but the people there were just really great people to talk to. They weren't too pushy. Of course, they're trying to sell their wares, but they were just good people. You could tell they just really were excited about the content they were making, and they were making great content. So shout outs to Outland Entertainment. So let's go through Warlock 5. I actually got doubles. So I think if anybody wants an extra copy of Warlock 5 number 1, I'd be more than happy to get you a copy. So just message me. But yeah, so really amazing cover. You immediately get like the semblance that there are 5 main characters or entities or aspects to what's going on in the story. A lot of covers have kind of like a painted, airbrush quality in the 80s. So you're like, okay, this is interesting. You got these little slivers. It doesn't totally pop, but it's stylistic. It's nice. And then you turn the page and you're like, holy shit. So Dennis, I don't know how to pronounce his name, but there are numerous movie posters that you've seen that he has been responsible for. And he's still doing painting to this day. This entire comic, it's not fully painted. There's some aspects that are just drawn regular illustrative style, but a lot of it is painted. But painted black and white. I don't know if he did ink washes. I don't know if he just did gray paint. I don't know. But the texturization and quality of the artwork in this book is just astounding. It by far exceeds most any other work that I have seen coming out of the 1980s black and white independent comic book boom. So you get those like 5 slices, same as here. So these are actually the same characters. They're just kind of done in different iterations of those characters. And so this was actually 1986 when it came out. So this is in the prime. 86 is the year. If there was any year to be, collecting comics or a part of comics, if you're interested in the black and white 80s independent market, it's the year. So immediately we get this like wizard performing a spell, a ritual, and I love how just he's using white as the energy coming off of the wizard staff. You get this like looming knight behind him watching what he's doing, and this like really interesting brick. I mean, there's no amount of laziness going on here. He really wants you to feel being in the story, and you're going to feel that throughout the rest of this book. So he's performing a spell, and he's talking about his Lord's legions crossing over to me. And so essentially what he's doing is he's creating a portal for his Lord's legions to walk through. So this isn't like one of the main guys, this wizard. So as badass as he is, I was like, oh yes, please. He's actually not one of the main dudes. It's that knight guy. And he's like, here they come, sire. So he's bringing his legions into a certain area, into a certain realm or world. And his lord, the knight, says, excellent, morbid, that's his name, the wizard's name, soon the entire grid shall be mine. So here's the concept. The concept is, it's a multiverse, but this is like, this was done in the 80s here, but it's a multiverse of different dimensions or universes, and they call it the grid. And each one of these 5 main characters are rulers of each one of these dimensions within the grid. And this guy is a ruler of one, and he wants the whole universe to bow before him. And so he's brought his legions over, and his name's Lord Dumador. I just love it, Lord Dumador. And he's brought his legions over, and you're finding out where. And here's an elevator, and they start peeking through, and he just starts walking down in this like subway station with his legions, knocking over some random citizen who's walking with their groceries. These images here are just so visceral. Like, again, there's no cutbacks on this. He's not shortchanging the artwork in any way, shape, or form. Where there's whites and negative space, they mean something. And then he's just going in for full realism as much as he possibly can. And just this imagery of these knights that have come in through some kind of magical portal, and then they're just walking through 1980s New York subway. Just love it. And I don't know if this is, I don't think it's got an airbrushed quality, but I don't know what he's using. I don't even know if the originals, that's be a good question to ask Jeremy Moeller. I might even try to get him on the channel at some point to talk about this as I go through these. But what did Denis use? Is it just oil painting? What? Gray washes, ink washes. So elsewhere in the slumbering city, another portal yawns, and here we get another character, and it's the character that basically is running a whole world order of robots. And it looks like it's probably human at first, but he takes off his mask, and it's a very Terminator-esque kind of character, and his name's Argon. He seems to be the only one that looks like that in that world, in that dimension, but they're getting ready and moving to fight head on with Dumador, Lord Dumador. So Argon and Lord Dumador. So yeah, obviously very heavily Terminator influenced, but I don't care. It's still just fucking amazing. And again, just what can I say about the artwork? Again, a great use of silhouettes as well. A lot of people use silhouettes to shortchange the artwork and to do, as a way to shortcut themselves through an image, but all used very effectively here. And not a ton of words yet. And then we get taken to another group of people, and this is two of the actual warlocks. So one of them is named Savishstar, and the other one Tanith. So Savishstar and Tanith. And they're sitting here just kind of lounging in this sort of like mansion. It's just gorgeous. It's got this kind of like gothic, feel to it. But also like there's like palms and stuff. It's just gorgeous. And there's still just this like very 80s punk feel about all of this as well. That gives it this like heavy metal rock and roll edge. And when I say heavy metal, I mean like the independent comic heavy metal. So these two characters they are leaders of each of their own dimensions as well, and I think Tanith is the leader of this realm, this dimension, and they've actually come to a truce, and they realize that like we need to have some kind of peace in order to maintain balance on the grid. But then there's this globe that starts glowing, and this like crystal orb, which communicates that okay, they're like a couple of these people are getting ready to battle again. And here's like an image that they see of the grid, and they can tell that like two of the leaders of these other dimensions are about ready to conflict. So they take off in their car, and they're heading off to like a specific parking garage that they know that this battle is going to take place at, in a parking garage. And she tells her guy Thorin, who's her main driver, to go. And she's got her name, of course, on her Cadillac here as they're zooming down. So they discuss that these people will disrupt the balance. So they go into this parking garage, and as they go into this parking garage, another vehicle pulls up, and this is our fifth person here, to kind of watch what's going on here from a distance. And this is Xania, who's the fifth leader of like the fifth dimensional area. But they're kind of just set up and ready to monitor what's going on as Tanith and Savishstar go into the parking garage in their caddy. So they go down to the third level of the parking garage, and here we go. We're getting a full-on battle of these knights and these like Terminator-esque robot, android figures getting ready to head on, like technology versus magic, like, that, which is like very, symbolical of, bringing in metaphor and stuff like that, blah 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 blah. I'm just talking out my ass at this point. It's just fucking cool. So Argon and Dumador start going after one another. So you get arrows versus lasers. They're able to use magic to repel some of these lasers. Again, where do you feel like the art's being shortchanged here? Not at all. It's just amazing all the way through. You get the wizard shooting and blowing magic at them as well. And then you get the two leaders just ready to completely take each other on in these nice little, like, you know, frontal images here. It's kind of cool. Even though Argon looks Terminator-esque, there's also looks to be like muscle and stuff. So you get this sense that like there's still like a human there. They're like, but then they've let cybernetics take over so much that they've like lost their humanity. So it's kind of cool. And here they go, getting ready to take each other on, and we get some really cool battle scenes. And you just get the two of them just kind of beating their chests while they're like taking on, you know, each other's henchmen and just screaming at each other. And then as they're fighting, then the caddy pulls up. Argon and Dumador, stop this idiocy. So Tanith and Savishtar and Tanith's little bodyguard Thorin um, are, you know, coming in to try to stop it all. They're like, screw that, and they're just shooting at them anyway. And so Thorin, her bodyguard, is like, I'm taking off his driver's suit, and he's like, I'm getting ready to take this on and protect my Tanith here. And so he goes into the trunk, and this guy's just like, she calls him her hot-blooded barbarian. He's got guns, he's got swords, he's got bullets. Like, this guy's just like ready to go full commando on all of these people. But Savishtar is like, you know what? Leave this one to me, though, Thorin. And he's like, oh. He just gets a little sad because he wants, why don't I get to spill some blood? He literally said it, when am I going to get to spill some blood? And Savishtar says, your chance will come soon. And then what happens here is that Savishtar starts morphing into what he really is. So he's not just some guy in a trench coat and weird glasses. He morphs into his true form. So look at this amazing transformation that happens. So he's actually like a dragon kind of figure and just starts blowing fire on everyone. And it just becomes disastrous. It just takes everybody out. It stops the whole battle, and just interferes and prevents it all from happening. So one of the, I don't think that's Dumador. No, that's not Dumador, but one of Dumador's knights is coming up behind Savishtar. Tanith, of course, is like, behind you. And she uses magic, so you can see that she has some sort of magical powers. And Thorin gets a chance to go in and protect her, so he's getting to take out some knights and some robots with his sword and his gun. And of course, Dumador's not going to have that, and he's like, you know what? I'm just going to take you for my pleasure slave. But Thorin steps in and is like, fuck you. That's my girl. And so they fight. He knocks off Dumador's faceplate, and that was enough for Dumador that his face was shown. And he brings his club down, but Thorin's still fighting back, and this is like hilarious. So all of this is like really well paced, and everything makes sense. And Thorin breaks Dumador's club, and she's just like, ha 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 ha. And that's obviously drawn directly from some sort of photo reference. And she's like, beautiful, Thorin. And then Dumador is like, pride goeth before a fall, boy. And boom, takes the shaft of his broken club and just shoves it up into Thorin's head and just impales him. He just dead. And his last words before he trails off into death is, Tanith, I love. And wow, that's it. That's Tanith going down. So Dumador takes his sword, or tries to, and I guess it electrocutes him. And she's using magic and, you know, pushing him away. And Savishtar still going at it. And finally, Argon's like, okay, we need to pull back. Dumador is like, okay, we need to pull back. And poor Tanith is here with her Thorin, who's completely dead. And goodbye, my love. So not only was he a bodyguard, but I guess they were lovers as well. So she picks up his sword and puts it in the trunk. And she's like, why must they always die? And why do I use them so heartlessly? So you get the sense that she's had in the past multiple, this has gone on for a long time, and she's had multiple people like Thorn that she has used as henchmen or bodyguards or whatever to kind of help all of this, kept in balance, and she feels like she's using them, which she kind of is. So anyway, Savage Star is kind of cleaning up everything, and then he sees Thorn's body there, and because they need to keep things quiet from the police and authorities of all these dimensions, he looks to her, and she's like, "Yep," and he decides to incinerate Thorn because we can't leave any trace, any evidence behind, so burn it all up. This image is just perfect. Just the way that the shadows are used. Again, it's not shortchanged at all because the way that the shadows are used specifically over his face, but you still see the highlights of his back and everything, so you still get enough detail to really feel the three-dimensionality of his form. But he's looking to her at this moment of like, should I burn him or not? So it's dark and it's a gloomy moment, it's a very dismal, instant of like trying to get from her what he needs to do, even though he doesn't want to do this. He respects Thorn. Just brilliant, absolutely brilliant. But he incinerates him, and they take off, and they just discuss like how messy of a business this is, and how can we resolve our differences so this doesn't happen again. And they try to leave the parking garage, and Xania, the fifth Warlock of the fifth dimension, is there waiting for them with all of her like radical anarchistic zombie dudes, whatever. And of course she is like the Mohawk, total punk, and is ready to take them out. And there you go. That's the first issue. Hell yes, sign me up. And I love how, like I said before, some of this is just illustrative. Some of this is just like pen and ink work, and not all of it is fully painted. And that's what I love. It's like there is a blend between, the painting and then just the actual like illustration, regular cartooning pen and ink. And so it's kind of the blending of that just also makes the style of artwork non-boring, right? So there are some comics that I've seen that are fully painted all the way through, and they're beautiful, but my eyes tend to glaze over after a while. And I think it's because maybe it's all the same. And in this case, it's awesome because there's a choppiness to it in a way. There's a rhythm, and he's using a little bit of everything. It's like, well, maybe this panel I'm going to just do all pen and inks. This panel I'm going to do mostly whites. This panel is going to be fully painted. So on and so forth. So he's just doing something different on every single page. And it's amazing. So way to go. So this is a pretty good editorial. I guess a lot of it is just, it's one of those that just like ask a bunch of questions to make you really get into the story. Like, what sort of person would risk his life and sanity to venture beyond the bounds of his world to partake of the greatest gamble ever conceived? A proud mad tyrant, a wise and loving mystic, a restless gifted dream. Blah, 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 blah. It doesn't really tell you a whole bunch. But the main characters are Tanith, Dumador, Xania, Savishtar, and Argon. They are the warlocks of each of their own dimension, and they are battling. And then, you know what? I tried to read this cartoon in the back, and I just really couldn't get into it. I love cartoons. But this just, it wasn't, it was just some guy running away from a bunch of people. The cartooning, I mean, compare, I don't know why they decided to, in this book, have another segment in the back, because this book was just amazing enough that anything else you would have put back here as just secondary fodder was just going to be just that. It's just secondary fodder. Nobody's going to care. And especially whenever you make it so cartoony and not without any kind of stakes, it's just very, like, not just in the artwork but in the story, it's very cartoony that you don't really care. Whereas this, like, there's stakes, you know? You really care what's happening here, and you're like, whoa, what's going on? And there's, it's intense. And then, I don't know. I don't know that this was a great editorial choice. Yeah, I don't really care about this, and I probably won't talk about it in the next one, unfortunately. And I know that's probably mean of me. And I'm not meaning to be mean, but I'm here mostly for the Warlock 5. There is an ad for Stark Future. It's another good book from Aerosol I liked. And you get a sense of some of their other books they had out, like Dragon Ring and Elf Lord. And I can't remember some of the other books that Outland Entertainment has from Aerosol, the properties that they've acquired, but I'm looking forward to reading these so I can get into this and actually read how it all ends up. So I'm kind of rereading some of these because I've read a few of them already in the past, but I'm going to reread them on this channel. We'll go through them. It'll be fun. I'm going to probably go through about the first 10 or so, just like the first main chunk of story, and then we'll do a review of Outland Entertainment's Cullen Bunn's rendition of Warlock 5 and see how that goes. So I hope everybody enjoyed this. Thank you so much. If you wouldn't mind, please hit the like button, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. You can also sign up on my Patreon, get exclusive content on my Patreon, including getting snippets of the next issue of my comic series Psychonaut Presents. Number 5 is exclusively going to be on Patreon. And then you can go to my website for my shop for any books and merch that you would like to get of mine as well. Anyway, thanks a ton. There will be links in the description to Outland Entertainment so you can collect Warlock 5 in its latest rendition. And everybody stay safe out there and keep it psycho.